They say that the war ended in 1945, that the world breathed a sigh of relief, that the Allies' victory brought peace. But that's a lie. The war never ended. It just changed form. Bombs were exchanged for contracts, generals for bankers, and tanks for barrels. What you're about to hear is a story that wasn't written in books. It was signed in silence. A pact between a desert king and the president of the most powerful nation on the planet. An agreement that created the invisible empire that still dictates the value of your life, your work, and even your freedom today. Oil, the black blood of the earth, didn't just power engines, it powered empires. And the empire that learned to control it came to control the world. Imagine the end of World War II. Cities in ruins, broken economies, the planet exhausted. But amid the ashes, the United States emerged intact. Factories functioning, armies ready, and an infinite thirst for power. Only one thing was missing: an inexhaustible source of energy to fuel the new American century. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, an arid desert concealed what would become the heart of this new empire: Saudi Arabia. A young kingdom, surrounded by sand and faith. Poor, isolated, but with something buried beneath its feet: black gold. In 1933, the Standard Oil of California, direct heir to the Rockefeller Empire, arrived in the desert with machines and promises. Men in hats, sweating under the sun, drilling the ground in search of something they weren't even sure existed. When the first jet of oil rose to the sky, it seemed like a blessing, but it was the beginning of a curse. King Abdulaziz saw there the chance to transform the desert into a kingdom. The Americans saw the chance to transform oil into power. And so a marriage of convenience was born. A simple agreement on paper, but diabolical in consequence. A few years later, the world plunged back into chaos. Second World War, bombings, famine. And while armies destroyed each other, the Americans kept the most valuable secret of all: the energy that would drive reconstruction. When the weapons fell silent, the refineries spoke. And the new empire rose, not on blood, but on fuel. In 1945, Roosevelt, old, sick, on the verge of death, requested one last meeting. Not with Churchill nor with Stalin, but with the Saudi king. The location? An American cruiser in the Suez Canal, the USS Quincy. There, under the Middle Eastern sun, two worlds met: the industrial West and the sacred East. What was said there was never officially recorded. No journalist, no translator survived to tell details. But there are accounts of a pact. The United States would guarantee eternal military protection to Saudi Arabia. In exchange, the kingdom would guarantee lifetime access to its oil. A handshake, a contained smile, and the birth of what would become the beating heart of modern capitalism: the invisible agreement that transformed oil into power. Time passed, oil spread, roads filled with cars, factories began to roar. The world believed that progress was freedom, but no one noticed the trick. Freedom was sold along with each barrel. Behind the scenes, another movement was happening. In 1971, Richard Nixon announced the end of the gold standard. From that moment on, the dollar would no longer be backed by metal. It would be backed by confidence, or rather, by dependence. And what would guarantee that confidence? Oil. The petrodollar was born. Each international energy transaction would have to be made in American dollars. The entire world, from Europe to Japan, would need the United States currency to buy fuel. It was brilliant and perverse. The more oil the world consumed, the more dollars it needed. The more dollars circulated, the richer the United States became. Printing paper that was worth power. It was like selling the air everyone breathes. Invisible, indispensable, inevitable. But every empire has its blind spot, and theirs was arrogance. In the 70s, Saudi Arabia began to realize its power. King Faisal, heir to the throne, looked at the West and said, "Without our oil, your factories stop, your cars stop, your lights go out." And then he closed the taps. The oil crisis of 1973 was the first warning. Mile-long lines at American gas stations, rising prices, the economy trembling, the empire feeling, for the first time, vulnerability. But instead of changing the system, power doubled down, manipulated markets, interfered in governments, started wars that never ended. Each invasion, each coup, each liberation in the Middle East had the same motivation: maintain the flow, guarantee the dollar, protect the agreement. From Iran to Iraq, from Kuwait to Afghanistan, the flags changed, the speeches too, but the oil was the same, and the blood, always the same. Oil became synonymous with national security, but security for whom? For the common citizen, nothing changed. For the elites, the game never stopped. With each barrel sold, more concentrated power, more dependency, more silence. The system grew so large it became untouchable. The great energy corporations merged with governments, banks, armed forces. It was impossible to distinguish where business ended and the state began. And meanwhile, the planet burned. The same fuel that drove modernity began to consume the future. The sky darkened, the seas rose, wars multiplied. All for a resource that never belonged to anyone but was treated as the property of a few. Years passed, new presidents, new wars, same interests, same desert. Today, the narrative changes its name, but not its essence. Oil is replaced by lithium, by silicon, by data, but the logic remains. Control the resources, control the system, control man. The petrodollar was the first symbiosis between currency and energy. Now, we live in the era of the data dollar, where the new oil is information and the new battlefield is digital. But the root is still there, in that meeting of 1945. In that handshake over the sea, the United States promised protection, Saudi Arabia promised oil. And in the middle, a world was born that belongs to no one, but controls everyone. Ancient empires used crowns, swords, and flags. The new empire uses contracts, banks, and data. And modern war is fought without shots, but with interest rates. Without invasions, but with sanctions. Without soldiers, but with algorithms. You don't need to see the empire to be governed by it. It's in your car's fuel, in your home's electricity bill, in the price of bread at the bakery, and in the illusion of freedom we call the global economy. Deep down, Roosevelt and Abdulaziz perhaps believed they were just ensuring stability. But what they created was a system of perpetual domination, where power no longer needs to show itself. It just flows, like oil, and that's what makes it so dangerous. The secret agreement that transformed oil into power was never broken. It just evolved, became more subtle, more sophisticated, more disguised. Today, oil still flows, but not just in pipelines. It flows in the veins of capitalism, and the question the world should ask is not who controls oil, but who controls the power to make it count. The empire survived because it understood a simple truth. Whoever controls energy controls time. And whoever controls time controls destiny. The story of oil is not about fuel, it's about submission. It's about transforming human necessity into a tool of domination. It's about creating a system so complex, so interconnected, that no one can escape anymore. Today, when a drone flies over a field, when a currency falls in the market, when a leader falls due to scandal, everything still carries the same echo, the distant sound of that handshake. The empire didn't end. It just became invisible. And perhaps that is the greatest victory of all. Power that hides so well that people no longer recognize it. But history, true history, always finds a way to emerge. Just as oil once sprouted from the sand, truth will one day come to the surface. And when that happens, it might be too late, because power, when too concentrated, rots. And what is born of greed always ends in ruin. Oil powered the 20th century. But fear is what powers the 21st century. And while the world seeks clean energy, the system merely seeks a new disguise. Because the real pollution isn't in the air, it's in the souls of those who believe they can control the world. In the end, what Roosevelt and Abdulaziz created wasn't just an agreement. It was a prophecy that transformed the desert into an empire, and the empire into a prison. Oil ended up shaping civilization, but also sealing its fate, and perhaps the true fuel of power was never oil, but illusion. The illusion that we can possess that which possesses us. The empire wasn't built with weapons. It was built with agreements, and the real battlefield is still the pocket of those who believe they are free. If this opened your eyes, subscribe. History still has secrets to reveal.